In 2025, everything we thought we knew about the global economy, well, it got turned completely upside down. A huge shift in US policy kicked off a trade war that pretty much pulled everyone in. So in this explainer, we're going to break it all down: the strategy, the weapons, and the fallout from this massive global gamble.
And really, this one quote says it all. It perfectly captures the kind of executive authority that was about to completely reshape decades of trade policy in just a few short months. Okay, so to make sense of all this, we're going to tackle it in 5 parts. We'll start with the big idea behind it all, then look at the tools they used to make it happen. After that, we'll see how the world reacted, zoom in on one critical industry, and then wrap up with the massive economic and legal fallout. So first things first, let's talk about the why. What was the big goal here? Well, the stated aim was a complete overhaul of the global trading system, all with the goal of protecting American workers and families. Now, you've really got to understand, this was a total 180-degree turn. For decades, the world had been moving towards more free trade. This new doctrine just slammed on the brakes, fully embracing protectionism and making tariffs its #1 weapon. All right, so that's the what. Now for the how. How exactly was this new doctrine put into practice? Let's get into the pretty controversial legal tools and economic formulas they used to launch this trade war. Okay, the whole strategy really came down to a very, let's call it creative, use of a law called EPA. Now, this law was designed for sanctioning rogue states, not for setting trade policy. But by declaring trade deficits a national emergency, the administration was able to bypass Congress entirely and just start rolling out tariffs. And it wasn't just the legal tool that was controversial. The math behind the tariffs was too. The formula got so much criticism that some of the very experts whose research the administration cited came out and said, hey, you're twisting our work to justify the complete opposite of what we actually found. And wow, did this all happen fast. It kicked off in February with tariffs on America's neighbors. Then in April came what the administration called Liberation Day, a blanket 10% tariff on almost everything coming into the country. By August, things got even more specific, and a huge shipping loophole was closed. In just over 6 months, the whole system was flipped on its head. So you can probably guess what happened next, right? The rest of the world wasn't just going to sit back and take this. These actions set off immediate retaliation, kicking off a full-blown, tit-for-tat global trade war. And the way other countries fought back was pretty strategic. They didn't just match the tariffs. They targeted industries that would hurt the U.S. politically. So you see China going right after agriculture in the American heartland. Canada hits key industrial metals. And the EU, they targeted iconic American products, everything from almonds to yachts. And it wasn't just about slapping tariffs on stuff either. Countries used other economic weapons. For example, China just stopped buying U.S. soybeans altogether. And even more seriously, they put strict controls on exporting rare earth minerals. And you have to remember, those minerals are in everything, from our phones to sophisticated military tech. Okay, to make all this feel a bit more real, let's zoom in on one industry that got caught right in the middle of all this: pharmaceuticals. In the fall of 2025, this sector became a massive high-stakes test case. 100%. That was the number that sent shockwaves through the entire healthcare world that September. A staggering 100% tariff on imported brand-name drugs, and it was going into effect in just a few weeks. The message was crystal clear: move your factories to the US, or your drugs are going to cost double. But here's the thing. This wasn't a blanket tax. The policy was surgical. It went after the expensive, innovative drugs coming from major research hubs, but it specifically exempted the cheaper, generic drugs and all the raw ingredients used to make them, a lot of which come from places like India. And that put the bullseye right on some major European players. We're talking countries like Ireland, Switzerland, and Germany. Suddenly, tens of billions of dollars of their pharma exports were at risk. And for the companies themselves, the stakes were astronomical. I mean, just look at these numbers. For giants like Roche and Novartis, the US isn't just another market. It's almost half of their entire global business. That made them incredibly vulnerable. And this is where it gets really serious, because the demand for medicine is what economists call inelastic. You can put off buying a new car if the price goes up, but you can't just decide to wait on buying a life-saving drug. So the experts were pretty clear. That 100% tariff, it was going to get passed directly to patients, full stop. All right, so let's zoom back out. What was the bigger picture? What did all this do to the economy? And what happened when it all ended up in court? Well, the moment those Liberation Day tariffs were announced, the markets just panicked. The sheer uncertainty of a global trade war sent investors running for the exits, and it showed a direct line between this policy and massive economic instability.
And the result? Over 1,000 points. That was the hit the tech-heavy NASDAQ took in a single day, its biggest point drop ever. And we're not just talking about numbers on a screen. That's billions and billions of dollars in value just gone.
And this wasn't just a Wall Street problem. The pain was very real, especially for American farmers. Remember how China retaliated? Well, they were the single biggest buyer of U.S. soybeans. And overnight, that entire market just vanished.
So this whole thing wasn't just fought in the markets. It ended up in a huge legal battle. Lawsuits started flying, and the core argument was that using an emergency act like IEEPA for tariffs was an unconstitutional overreach of power. A lower court actually agreed, setting the stage for a massive showdown at the Supreme Court.
And that leaves us with this massive hanging question. The Supreme Court's decision isn't just about these specific tariffs. It's really about the limits of presidential power itself. And the whole world is basically holding its breath wondering, is this chaotic new era of trade policy the new normal?